How do we equip our families with a biblical worldview? How do we prepare the next generation for life? How do I grow in my walk with the Lord and in my marriage? If you wrestle with these questions, you are in the right place to find answers. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. All right, so I am excited today. On today's episode, I have Shelby Parfait here with me. Shelby is the director, founder of Parfait Studios here in Murfreesboro, which does all kinds of awesome music and drama, amazing things that they do. And I'm so thankful that she is with us here today. So hello, Shelby. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we are glad that you are here too. So for those not familiar with it, tell us a little about what is Parfait Studios.
Well, Parfait Studios is a music and theater instruction studio. Okay. My husband and I offer private and group instruction in instrumental music, vocal music, as well as theater. And in the past year, we've expanded and made a commitment to offer 2 theater performance opportunities, one being a play and one being a musical per year, exclusively for our students. But at its core, and maybe more importantly, Parfait Studios is a place for children, youth, and young adults to have access to performing arts education in a safe and fun, family-oriented environment.
I like that, safe and fun, a family-oriented environment. What was the motivation for you to start it? And how long have you been doing it?
Okay. Well, music and theater has really been a part of my life for almost as long as I can remember. I spent countless years as a performer and now almost a decade working with young people through music and theater. I loved performing on stage, but I think I love watching young people grow through performing arts even more. So growing up, my sister Sonia and I spent most nights and weekends at performing arts lessons, as I know your girls do. Whether we kind of lived there, whether it was flute or percussion lessons, dance lessons, vocal lessons, or rehearsals for band or performances, it was just a huge part of who we were. I don't think our parents ever intended us to choose it as a profession, but we both really have loved performing professionally. Really, though, there's a time in my life where my life looked a whole lot different than it does right now. And in a lot of ways, I believe that music and theater saved my life. At times when I didn't think I was good at anything else, and at times when I needed something to hold on to, music and theater have been the one thing that has always been there. Because taking part in music and theater does something to your soul, and it's something that brings you peace and comfort and a sense of belonging for a lifetime. In addition to my work at the studio, I really love being a part of outstanding performance groups like Portara Ensemble in Nashville, and I'm looking forward to the collaboration with several theater groups here in Middle Tennessee that are going to be taking part in the next year. But even my sister, she's a university assistant professor, but she still makes time to make it a priority to perform as a member of Tulsa Flute Band, and performs on original music soundtracks for shows that we direct through the studio, and often helps to choreograph dance numbers for musicals within the studio. So all of those are kind of reasons why I started Parfait Studios. I know firsthand how valuable music and theater education can be. My sister and I were so blessed with instructors and directors in our lives that taught us so many important lessons, not just about music or dance or theater, but about life. I am so blessed that I get to share my love of music and theater through my teaching at the city of Murfreesboro and with my band students at Friendship Christian School, but something was missing. Everything out there in this area, specifically for theater, seemed to stress competition above all else and that competitive excellence. And it bothered me. I wanted students to be able to thrive in a non-competitive, supportive, and uplifting environment, which isn't to say that we don't compete. Parfait Studios students compete if they choose to do so, and they perform incredibly well. But the focus of what we do is different. I have some really firmly held beliefs for the studio. My kids could quote them all for you verbatim, probably. One of the things is we operate on the belief that there's a place for everyone in performing arts. I will never look into the eyes of someone that God doesn't love. And for that reason, everyone has a place at Parfait Studios. We have students that come to us with more talent in their little finger than I will ever have. And some students come to us with zero experience in music or theater or dance. At Parfait Studios, as my kids will tell you, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And we encourage each of our students to strive for their individual best, both in and outside of the studio. We focus on encouraging one another instead of competition, and we collectively celebrate the growth of each individual student. So I guess I could say Parfait Studios was begun in an effort to provide a safe and encouraging place for performing arts education. It's just so rewarding to see students there thrive. They're so incredible on and off stage. And I'm just really, really grateful and blessed that we get to be a part of their lives.
It's encouraging because it seems like so much is competition driven just in life and everything else. I'm all for competition. I'm all for having that as a source or an option. Mm-hmm. But man, there is something else about stepping out and performing. That's just like a total different stress level. Mm-hmm. You know, when you step out on stage and you're it, right? There is not a soul around you. You are at an island. So adding that competition level just ratchets the stress so high up. Have you seen people really kind of growing from just the ability to attempt, to learn, to try without that competition, or just in general? How have you seen that growth?
Well, it's interesting because I measure growth in a lot of different kinds of ways. You know, we do have students who compete and they go to Governor's School for the Arts and to Interlochen and to Tisch in New York, and Music Theater International has camps and programs and recordings that they've done. And some of them have won competitions and they perform professionally. I have some big grown kids who do that now. And that is definitely one way to measure growth. Okay. Mm-hmm. But really, I want to see them grow in their lives. And that's one of the things that I've really learned through the studio is that kids and young adults need people to see them and love them the way they are and accept them without having to work so hard for it. I think when you add that level of competition, you have students who will never even try to take part because they just want to please mom or dad or aunt or uncle, and they want to get out there and be the lead, and they feel bad about themselves when that doesn't happen. And when you measure growth by those other soft skills, by learning how to be confident and learning to embrace the other people in your cast as a family and challenging yourself musically to do something you didn't think you could do before, they stand up a little straighter. You know, my students will tell you that we are loving, supportive, and accepting and celebrate success, but we're not an everybody gets a trophy kind of group either. Now, I set really high expectations for my kids, and I challenge them to go beyond what is easy and to have them work hard. And when you watch what happens, when they hear those coveted words of that was truly wonderful, they stand straighter, they smile bigger, and take a moment to celebrate themselves and their hard work. And measuring that individually instead of comparing them to someone standing next to them, it makes it so much easier and so much more attainable to have that level of success and to feel good about what they're capable of accomplishing.
I like that. You talk about having high expectations, and yet you make a safe environment for them. And I like that because you're pushing them beyond what they think they can do, because sometimes we have a very inaccurate view of ourselves on what we're capable of. So how did you learn, or what do you do in terms of trying to do that individually with them? Is it something just because of your experience over time, you're able to kind of see, I can read them and I know if I encourage them to do this, then maybe it'll go farther. I'm just thinking of it from a coaching perspective or a teaching perspective. Is that something you've learned over time? How do you do that?
I think it's definitely something I've learned over time. And my kids teach me every single day. They teach me as much as I teach them. They will tell me what they need. I can tell by their body language. I have some students who, if I tell them they're great, will stop working. And I have other students that will dissolve into tears if they don't think they did well. So they run the gamut. I have students who have difficulties in one area, but not another. I have some that have speech issues that they're overcoming, and some who couldn't carry a note when they first got there. And now they can sing a song without me having to sing along with them or be brave enough to stand on stage by themselves. I've learned to kind of see each person as an individual And I truly believe that God puts students in our path that need to be there when they need to be there. And they're really good about telling me what they need. And I find that what they need in a sense of learning theater or learning music is the same thing they need in the rest of their life. If they need that extra encouragement, or if they need that strict scheduling, if they need those rules, or if they need the freedom, I think that really is able to put a microscope on what they need for their life. And my hope is that they take some of that out of their lessons and out of theater and apply it to everything else in their life.
That's encouraging to me too, because I'm thinking I've coached in years past, even teaching in various capacities now, trying to figure out how to connect individually with people. And there's challenges in that because every person's different. And yet seeing the long view like you're doing, it's like, okay, I got the long view. My goal for them is growth. And yet, so we're not aiming for this impossible feat. It's just like that next step. And how do we get them to like December? And once we hit December, how do we get them to June? Do you tend to see big jumps? Do you just see sort of this gradual type of change over time, whether it's in performance, whether it's in personality, confidence? What do you see?
I see that confidence kind of builds a little bit more slowly and kind of at the same level as their experience builds. Because they're in a supportive environment, because they have an entire group of 40 other kids cheering them on and celebrating those little small successes, the braver they get and the more courageous they get. I think we see smaller strides in technique and maybe slower strides in confidence. But I think the strides of things like just being brave and being fearless and believing in themselves, I think that happens a lot sooner. And really, I've learned that, and it doesn't just show based on what I do, but what their parents think of them. Kids will never tell you they care. What matters to them is how their parents think they're doing, because I will see kids as we perform, they will be so excited for themselves and they take on that stage and they hold the microphone in their hand, or they take center stage and that spotlight hits them in the middle of a show. And they're looking for their parents' eyes as they perform. And I've seen it build them up, and I've seen it not build them up. It's so important that they have support from everyone around. And I think that matters a lot more than people think when it comes to growth, whether you're coaching softball or whether it's basketball or swim team or theater, drama, or dance, that parents, as much of a role as I play in their kids' life, parents and other adults in their lives, they're looking for that approval out in the audience. And it's so important that they get it back.
So as a parent, my kids are part of your program. You know, I'm slightly biased. We love it. So as a parent, though, just in general, whether, you know, my kids are part of your program, not part of your program, what are things that we can do? You know, you talk about the idea that they look to us as soon as they grab the mic. What are things we can do both during a performance, whatever that may be? In this case, it would be a theater production or a voice, or even pre-performance or during the week, you know, during the hard and the grind kind of stuff. What do you think we can do to help them along, or to encourage them, or just remind them of how God has gifted them and, you know, how special they are?
Well, I think saying those words is vitally important. I think a lot of times I think their kids know that. But also, I'm going to go back to that competition thing. And I have so many conversations. Kids catch on much quicker than parents do to not competing with one another, right? We have all the Facebook pictures of, oh, my kid did this and oh, they did that. And your kids are so aware of all of those things. And I really try to make a point to tell my parents, you did well. Your kids did well. But the way that you did well as a parent with your child is them having the courage to get up there and try, to get up there and give it 100%. When they're in there doing their solfege, which they already hate, trust me, I know that. They don't want to sing their Italian. They don't want to practice their solfege. They don't want to think about characterization. When they're doing all of those things, support them and saying, you know what, this is a really great thing. I'm so proud of you for trying. I'm really proud of all of your hard work, because they're not competing at the studio with one another, but they do care what parents think about them. And they want parents to do all the Facebook bragging about them too. even when they're not the lead, even when they're not the best, even when they're struggling. You know what? We had a great time and it was so much fun, and all that hard work was worth it. Kids catch on to that faster than parents do, honestly.
I totally believe it. So it really sounds like for us as parents, the real win, the real thing that we need to do is we need to praise the work, and we need to praise the effort, and we need to praise and encourage the day in, day out, the effort put into it, not so much the final result, because the results will take care of itself.
Right.
But that daily, weekly kind of grind, if you will.
Right. Right. And that encouragement is vitally important. We do that in the studio. We do it intentionally. So that it's one of the big driving forces is to be intentional about not only critiquing, but praising. My kids will tell you before they're allowed to find fault with anything they've done in a performance or an audition, they have to find 3 things they did well. Because in everything you do, you're not bad at everything you try, even if something doesn't go well. There's always 3 things that you can find that you did well and that you worked hard at. And so we do all of those things intentionally to help build students up. So it's not an environment of critique and always feeling like you're not good enough. It's an environment of, hey, you know what? I did great and I can still do even more.
That's really cool. The idea of the 3 things you did well before something to improve upon. Do you think over time, let's just say you get around that environment with enough time, do you think that sticks long term to sort of change some patterns in their personal thinking and their own sort of the way they respond to life?
Yes. And I see it, especially with school. I have one student in particular that I'm thinking of who will text me in the middle of the day when they do really, really well on a test. Or if they are struggling with friends, they'll tell me, hey, these things went great today, but this didn't go so great. And so I know, at least with me, they get used to that interaction of there's really more good in the world than there is bad about the world or themselves. And so I see it translate mostly in school, like, well, I didn't do great on my spelling test and I kind of don't understand math, but I made 100 in history and can celebrate that, And so that's what we try to do. And then they'll say, then that shifts to being, hey, you know what? I did great in history. My makeup was on point today and I got to school on time. So it doesn't really matter in the long term that I didn't do so great on my math test. Right. And so it kind of shifts that way of thinking. And they kind of start to do it without even realizing it. And what I really love is to watch my students do that with each other. Someone will come off stage maybe and say, I cannot believe I dropped that line. I cannot believe that I didn't have my prop or something bad happened. And I will watch without prompting my students say, but think of everything you did great. And that I really believed you in that moment. And that song was really wonderful. And they build each other up and focus on the good instead of bad. And that's really what I want. I want them to look for the light and cling to things that are good and pure and step into someone else's skin and try it on for a while and see how it fits and learn empathy and unconditional acceptance for themselves and for others.
That is like a huge life skill. And that can change, the outcome and just the whole spectrum for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm. That's my hope. And we do a little bit of singing as we do that too, but and theater. But it's kind of like, that everyone, I think, needs to find something that they find joy in, something that allows them to get to those peaceful, happy places in themselves and in the world. And my hope is that these kids will recognize the unique role that performing arts has to help them really, really do that and find joy and feel loved when they need it.
That is powerful. That really is. Let me just slightly transition just a bit. I get the music thing, right? I get the voice. And how do we connect even Jesus to theater and musical theater and drama? And it doesn't have to be overt, right? I mean, you can still do all kinds of really cool plays and cool musicals. But at the same time, how do you connect that? I've seen just this beauty in some of the things that you guys are doing. And so I'd love for you to share on that, because I know that question was at the back of my mind a few years ago. And I got to believe it's in the mind of other people who are listening, like, okay, and theater just scares me, right? We can't go there because, it's.
I get that. Well, you think about it. relationships with God are intentional, and allowing Jesus to kind of pervade your life is something that you have to intentionally do. However, God's there whether you want him to be there or not, right? Mm-hmm. And music and theater and dance, they connect you, and visual art connect you on such a different level to things around you. They're intended to evoke an emotional response, right? Mm. And so I know, at least I hope, there's a lot of church people, and I say that in air quotes, that have experienced one of those moments when they let music in particular take them to the front door of heaven, and Jesus wraps his arms around their heart and dances along with them. When that moment happened to me, I was an unchurched person, and music took me to that point. It's actually one of my favorite stories that I share with my students, that moment when I realized that God was dancing with me, and I kind of got there through music. And there are so many great overt things, kind of like you said, shows like Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar and Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Obviously, they're overt examples of feeding God to the masses, right? Putting the word out there, whether you agree with the way it's portrayed or not portrayed, that you kind of get that message of what God came on this earth to do for us and what God does for us. There's other less obvious examples like Les Miserables, which is one of the most well-known musicals. It's a story at its core about the redemption of Jean Valjean and his efforts to live in a Christian way in the juxtaposition of the law of man and the law of God. And so if you really want to delve into some of that theater, you can see that writings and poetry and art and music and drama is really meant to kind of get us into that communion space, that emotional feeling space, to be able to share in that experience with God. Christmas pageants, Easter pageants that everyone's kid has done with the little baby Jesus and little angels with their tinfoil halos, right? At Christmas gives us that front row seat to love and faithfulness and sacrifice. But I will go back and argue that theater has a unique ability to let you step into the shoes of another person and to experience life from their perspective. And in my humble and I'm sure flawed opinion, the best way to live like Christ is to love and accept others as he does. And there's no better way to practice empathy and experience all those emotional things like joy and sorrow and love than through music and theater.
Wow. So even in character, whether it's in song, whether it's through various characters that you're portraying, you really have to take on whatever the character asks you to take on, however it's written, however it's directed, you have to kind of take that on, right?
Right. And I like to think of it as, Jesus did that for us. He came and walked in this human skin and kind of knows what it's like to walk in our world and can relate to us in that way. And what a better way to live Christ-like than to try to do that and interact that way with other people, right? And to put on that skin and see things a little bit differently, experiences that you would never have in real life, you get to have on the stage and through music. And I think that's a really good way of connecting those thoughts and feelings and emotions of other people, and the ability to then connect with them the way that Christ loves people, which ultimately I think is what we're called here to do.
Absolutely. Now, one of the really cool things too that I have seen is you have been able to take really your own experiences, your own giftings, the way the Lord has equipped you, whether it's with song, whether it's with art, these strengths, and really kind of say, okay, Lord, here's the 5 loaves and the 2 fish that you gave me. Help me to just use it to glorify you. And other people are going, yeah, but that's not really my thing. In terms of, I don't really have the music thing going on, but yet, they have this other thing going on, right? Whether it's, those blessed accountants, or, whether they're like, I'm very good with my hands or something else like that. Would you have any encouragement for them to say, how to use their gifts, their talents, to glorify God?
Sure. I would say, man, all you got to do is show up. God can do incredible things if you just show up and open your mouth, right? And allow that to kind of move through you. Like I said, he's there whether you want him to be there or not. But if you intentionally invite God into what you're doing, I could teach every single day and never mention God or try to model Christian love, or what I think we should do as Christian people. And I would have students probably still be really incredible on stage and compete at the levels they want to do and be successful. right? But I want so much more for them than those kinds of successes. And I think no matter what we do, no matter what our job is or what we think our gifting is, we want so much more for the people that we interact with on a daily basis than just to have people clap for them when they do something good, right? I love my kids so much and want them to know who God is, that he loves them more even than I do, just as they are. So whether it's something you overtly say or something you overtly do, all you have to do is use what God has given you and share his love in any way that you can. And that's what the world needs really more than anything else.
I love that. The idea of just showing up, because sometimes we get so caught up in, am I going to do it right? Am I going to be perfect? And we get all this negative self-talk going, and then we don't step up, right? It's sort of like the idea of, I'm afraid to get on stage, right? I'm afraid to stand up to the mic.
Right.
And regardless, we just step up, right?
Right. You just have to be brave and let God do the rest.
That is beautiful. And I need that. I know I need that reminder, because man, I get like right to the edge and I'm like, ooh, I don't want to take that next step, but that's where the good stuff's at.
Right. Right. Only when you're brave to fail do good things happen. Oh,
that is such an encouragement for me. That's something, I know everybody listening to this, they need that. And our kids need that. You're right. They need that encouragement to take a risk, because you don't grow unless you take a step forward.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, Shelby, we're about out of time. So for anybody who wants to know more about some of the really cool things you guys are doing, where would you want them to go?
Probably the easiest thing is to shoot me an email. The email address would be parfaitstudiostn@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to connect with them. We'll have a Parfait Studios performance coming up the first two weekends in November. We're doing Sherlock Holmes. It's going to be so much fun. They can come out and see that. We're at Mills Pate Art Center, which is going to be a really, really fun time. But we would love to meet you guys. We love meeting new families and finding a place for kids, and just giving us an opportunity to love on your kids and teach them a little about music and theater while we go.
We'll put that information in the show notes. You'll be able to access that, reach out to Shelby. It is good stuff. I will tell you firsthand, with my kids involved in this, I have seen such a growth in them in the time they have been here, just in their personal development, just in their willingness to continue to grow. So I can't encourage you enough to reach out. It's good stuff.
Thank you so much. Your kids are great. All of my kids are fantastic. I love them all.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, thank you, Shelby. And thank you for joining me this afternoon on this podcast. This was a gift, and man, I so appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Wow, that was a great conversation with Shelby. A couple things that jumped out at me. One was just the importance for us as parents with our kids, just to be engaged, to be supportive, and to encourage and praise the work and not necessarily the end product or the result. That by encouraging the work, the results will take care of themselves. But at the end of the day, it's all about encouraging them forward. Second thing was, just as believers, part of our job is just to show up, right? With how we're equipped, with the way the Lord has gifted us, we need to use what we have for His purposes to pursue Him and glorify Him. So, great conversation with Shelby. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review for us wherever you listen to podcasts. Doing so will help others to find us. Check out the show notes for resource information. We encourage you to do that for links and other references. We'd like to hear from you, so you can message us your questions or comments on Facebook, Instagram, at Entrusting the Faith. You can email us at info@entrustingthefaith.com. If you go to our website, which is www.entrustingthefaith.com, you can sign up to our email list and receive free resources as well as upcoming podcast episode information. So check it out. Lastly, just remember, legacies are built a day at a time. So start now.